breaking right now, and I want to let you know that this is happening in our community. I just discovered moments ago that Peyton Gendron, the top smash shooter, is now asking for a change of venue. He wants the trial that's supposed to start in September moved from Buffalo to New York City. And why he's doing this is because he says that there is an overwhelming prejudice against him in this community, and that he cannot have a fair trial here in Buffalo. This trial's supposed to start in September, and here we are.
Less than 6 months away.
Months away from that expected trial start date, and he's saying now, in this court filing that was just filed, that he wants all of this changed out of the area so that he can have a fair and impartial jury selected. Anita, no, he deserves the prejudice. Lori, I wonder why. Jeanette, a fair trial.
Lauren,
why is this an option?
And you know what? Do I think that he would be successful downstate? Probably not. But it is something that is tough to hear when you're talking about something. He came to our community, right? Targeted our community. And now he wants to say, oh, well, we could do the trial somewhere else. Because I don't know if the Buffalo people can be impartial.
And so here we are. I mean, next month will mark 3 years since the top smash shooting. And when you consider the implications of our community, like where we started as a community prior to this, the day it happened, and then where we've been over the last 3 years, and this trial continues to plague our community in the sense that it's costing us a ton of money to house this guy, to bring him to Western New York. We knew death penalty cases in particular would cost a lot of taxpayer dollars. Yet if they didn't seek the death penalty, his defense attorneys have said that he would have just pleaded guilty to all the charges against him.
Yeah, it's wild to think. Della's saying he killed 10 people, our family member Celestine Chaney, and you talk about all of those neighbors that he killed, that he came to our community and targeted us. Connie says, no way. Well, don't come here and kill people. He shouldn't be able to move it that far away.
And that's what Lauren is saying. Yeah, F that. He chose his fate. Now he can't handle it. Eat glass, she says. Anita, capital punishment. Dorothy, we don't have the mental institutions we need for people like him. And look, I struggle with that because, on one hand, is there an argument for a mental health issue here? I mean, I'm not his lawyer. I'm not going to argue anything for him, but many people have said that he had no mental issues.
But when we think about, what is fair, that's what's being questioned here. Is it fair to be tried where you did the crime? Why not? Why not? You did the crime here. You don't want to be tried here? I mean, you don't want to face trial in Western New York in the community that you targeted?
Well, and here's my question on a bigger level. This is interesting to me because he's already pleaded guilty to the state charges.
Exactly.
We already know he did it. We already know he's guilty. He's already serving a life sentence on these state hate crime charges. But now, because the death penalty is involved here, is he looking for a fair and impartial trial? They are just trying to spare his life at this point.
And they're trying to move it, give themselves more time, buy more time. They're throwing whatever they can. They're throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks, it sounds like.
Noreen, just an evil soul. My mom weighing in here saying, New York City is the most diverse area in the country. Why does he think the outcome will be any different? And then Peter says, this nutcase still wants to make everyone suffer. The families don't deserve this treatment. Anita, kind of cavalierly saying, bring back old Sparky. Connie, no mental issues here. Right. Lauren, this was not a mental issue. This was hate. And frankly, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, she says the people that got targeted did not get fairness, justice, or anything of the sort. He doesn't deserve any of that. R.I.P. to her longtime family friend, Ms. Pearl Young. So many people that we've now spent almost 3 years without, our neighbors who were just going to grocery shop, that didn't get fairness that day.
And, we've spoken with so many of these family members. Pearl Young's family, they are beautiful. They are so kind and eloquent. And, you have that bond with these people. Garnell Whitfield, who lost his mother, Ruth, 86 years old. She was the matriarch of their family. And she had just visited her husband, who is in a nursing home, going to buy seeds for flowers. you hear these stories and how this man, 18 years old, traveled from Conklin, New York, outside of Binghamton, to Buffalo just to target the most densely populated Black community in New York.
And now he's asking to be moved to New York City because he says it would not be fair if this trial happened here in Buffalo.
Barbara says, when did we start coddling criminals? It's ridiculous. Anita says, hundreds of thousands of dollars being wasted on him versus the cost of one bullet to a head. And I struggle with that too, because
it's all tough. It's all tough. I mean, that's when we get into the legal system and you have a situation where he has pleaded guilty and he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. Then you have a whole nother system talking about the death penalty.
Right.
It's hard to wrap your mind around it and, keep it black and white, I guess. But
John says death penalty is not moral or ethical. I'm not in support of this guy. Put him in solitary confinement and close the door for the rest of his life. I'm sure the other inmates will take care of him. And this is kind of what I was thinking, what you were saying, Anita, an eye for an eye. And I didn't want to get into that because, an eye for an eye, he killed 10 people. How do you rationalize that and then say this is what your punishment is, other than the possibility of death?
And does that make us? Will that make us feel better?
Right.
I mean, the healing process, the trauma is always going to be there.
Right.
What he did to this community is always going to be there. At this point, I just don't think I don't want to see him anymore. I don't want to deal with him anymore. I want it to be over and done with.
And David says you can thank New York State's governor for that. So this has nothing to do, in this instance, with Governor Hochul.
Right.
In terms of, and I want to make sure that we're very clear here, because I think a lot of people are very confused about the legality, the red tape, and, the process. So I want to make sure that you understand the process, David, because in this case, this really has nothing to do with Governor Hochul. This is all to do with the federal case.
The state case is over. This is all the federal case.
And so in this instance, the federal case is still on the table. He faces hate crime charges in addition to facing the death penalty. So everything that happened in New York State that he's already pleaded guilty to and is already serving his life sentence in prison is now being taken to a higher level, a higher court, which is now going over the same thing with more evidence to determine if he will face the possibility of being killed for what he did. And we already know he did it. So this is now, and here's the most interesting part about this, I think. He's trying to say that having the death penalty given to him as an option, or having the death penalty put in place against him as the possibility of being sentenced to death, he's using race as an issue.
Yep. His team has said that they used the word arbitrary, which was so interesting to see. And that came out, 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm. Right before I left. They said it was arbitrary, number one. And number two, they said that because President Biden let all of the Black and Hispanic death row inmates off, essentially giving them life in prison instead of giving them the death penalty. In doing so, he left all the white guys on death row.
And now here we stand.
And this guy killed 10 people, 10 Black people.
Right. Paul is speaking up here saying, our system is in place to ensure a fair trial no matter what you're accused of doing. It is not a system where you pick and choose who gets a fair trial. And let's be honest, he's not asking for a new venue. His lawyers are doing that because it's their job. His team has to do whatever they can. It's their job. I think that's a fair point. They're going to try to do that. It's not the first time that's ever happened. People always try to get cases moved. It's not out of the ordinary, but obviously I think it's going to raise a couple of eyebrows and, for our community and people who have felt that trauma, it's not going to sit well with us.
No. Robin, wow, thank you. Didn't realize it was going this far. Yeah, this is a huge deal. This is a high-profile case that is genuinely one for the record books, and the fact that they are seeking the death penalty against him and now have to go through with a trial to try and figure out if he will get life or death.
And we have to keep talking about it, and we have to keep bringing this up because, no one wants to hear that name. No one wants to talk about him, but we have to because it is such a big case and it is such a big deal. And what happened to our community can't be ignored. And we have to keep talking about the implications. Here we are coming up on 3 years next month. And of course, we're going to keep talking about it and following this case because this is like a bombshell case. Once we get to that trial, wherever it is, I mean, this is going to be on national news. People are going to be talking about this for months on end.
Well, because it also has implications when it comes to social media and control over content. We know he live streamed everything that he did. He fired 60 shots. He killed 10 black people, shot and hurt 3 others, and then apologized to the white guy that he shot by accident in the leg. All of this broadcast in 2 minutes and 38 seconds, thanks to a GoPro that was strapped onto his helmet and a live stream.
Not to mention the word he had written on the gun.
Right. And you know what? I will never, ever forget when I was there and talking to that one woman who had just seen the video. And in that moment, we had heard reports of a video, and I don't know, you were there also. Actually, I don't know if you were there for this.
You were there, and I was still in the studio. But eventually, once I got to the press conference, is when they confirmed it was a hate crime.
So we had, when I was on the ground talking to so many different people, heard reports of, okay, there was a video. Okay, it was live streamed. This is what he was wearing. This is what he had written on the gun.
You see like screenshots of the video of the stream.
And when I was there talking to one woman in particular, and we have it someplace from that feed that 3 years ago.
I still have it on my laptop.
She mentioned specifically what was written on the gun. And, it caught me off guard because she literally hard-R'd it.
She said it on TV.
Yeah.
But, we were at such a raw and emotional moment. And that is what he wrote on the gun. And normally when you have these situations, or it may or may not be a hate crime, you hear from political figures and authority figures, okay, we're not sure, we're going to investigate if it was a hate crime. They did not take more than a couple of minutes. They said this is a hate crime. And that's how I knew how serious it was and how much hatred was involved when even politicians were ready to be like, oh, this was an act of hate.
And, and so my point is here that it caught me off guard when she said that, and she literally said the N-word on TV. And it was at that moment, I think, that we realized as a community how important it is to talk about race relations, segregation, redlining, all of the implications and all of the root cause issues that led to this moment in Buffalo.
Systemic racism. You talk about the East Side and the 33 and the role that plays and how we got to this point. And we've done some of the work, right? We've gotten there. We've had some of these conversations, and we had a lot of them in the days and weeks that followed. But even 3 years later, we still have to keep talking about it.
Katie says it should not be moved. It's absolutely ridiculous. People in Buffalo need to see this through till the end. So maybe people can start to heal. And, I want to point out that this is just emotion. This now has to be litigated, and a judge will ultimately rule whether it will be moved to New York City or if it stays in Buffalo. If and when it is decided that this will stay in Buffalo, you'll hear about it. And even if it is moved to New York City, there's no way that you won't have access to what happens inside the courtroom, because you better believe that we will all be there. Anita, at kind of putting the period at the end of the sentence here, it's 2025. Racism shouldn't even be a thing. It should just be history.